Good afternoon. Thank you for taking up some of my time. I asked for 40 minutes, but I was running through it, and I think I overestimated how much material I had. So this is good. I think we'll be able to keep on time. So again, I'm Nicky Williams. I am a resource conservationist out of the Des Moines State Office. I've been the CRP program manager for about 2 months. Again, Al Lang jumped ship over to FSA, and he now works for national headquarters on the FSA side. So it's really cool to see somebody with a conservation background that is now hopefully going to have a lot of input on maybe some of the policy that FSA is putting together. So a few things that I'll be going over today. I'll be talking about some CRP updates, so looking at the acres of the program. Just some general information about CRP in Iowa, touch on CRP certification, and then go over our conservation cover practice standards, so our review process for updating the standard, looking at the seeding plan supplement, and then also the seeding calculator review. So starting with CRP, I think everybody knows what CRP is. So I'm going to glaze over this one. Basically, farmers are getting a yearly rental payment for seeding down their ground. So where we stand right now with CRP, the national cap for this fiscal year, which will end September 30th, is 25.5 million acres. Our current enrollment is 22.1. So next year, we are going to be increasing, our FSA is going to be increasing that cap to 27 million acres. FSA is really pushing and promoting to reach that cap this year. So if they want to do that, we've got about 3.4, if I can do my math right, an additional 3.4 million acres is what they want to hit this year. What I am hearing is that if we want to reach that cap, a lot of it's going to have to be in the grasslands out in the western states, not so much around here. And then, let's see. Okay, so of the caps, of that 27 million acres, it's mandated that at least 8.6 million need to be in continuous, and then 2 million need to go into that grassland program. Then I just want to touch on the administration's goals. One of the goals is climate smart ag. I've been hearing a lot about it at work. I'm sure there's a lot about it in the news as well. But they're looking really hard at CRP to help mitigate the impacts of climate change. And FSA is looking at this from all aspects, from preventing the release of carbon dioxide. They're looking at monitoring. That's pretty much it on that. Oh, and then providing better incentives for CRP, and I'll be going into that. Some other administration goals, equity in programs and outreach. One of the big topics right now is urban ag, cultural diverse workplace, and then also leveraging partnerships. So some overall program updates to CRP, and again, these are all changes that happened June of last year. Increasing the collaboration with partners to monitor, measure, and verify climate benefits and environmental performance. So with that, just getting better environmental estimates of what the impacts of CRP are. So from that, increasing the program effectiveness by informing science-based program policy changes, and then making sure that our clients are selecting the right kind of CRP that's for them. Along with that, NRCS gets more money to help implement CRP. So general CRP, so the bidding process, a couple of changes that happened last year. They added in a climate smart practice incentive, an additional one-time 10% inflationary adjustment. So these are both impacts to the annual rental rate. And then another change they did was the county rental rate adjustments. Previous, there were 3 categories, basically low, medium, and high for the rental rates. Last year, they broke them down into 5 different categories. And looking at the soil productivity index range from 50 all the way up to 150% of that county rental rate. Just a quick note, the maximum rental rate for general CRP is still $240 an acre. But big picture for general CRP, more incentives to hopefully increase the interest in it. CRP has all of those benefits and more, so they still get that climate smart practice incentive. So with that, to break it down a little bit, if the CRP is going into grass, that's a 3% rental rate incentive. If it's going into grass and a legume mixture, that incentive is 5%. And then if it's going into woodies, it's a 10% rental rate incentive. Let's see. So again, the same inflationary adjustment, same soil rental rate adjustment. An additional one that's in continuous CRP, or that continuous enrollment. For water quality practices, there's an additional incentive from 10% to 20%. Is anybody keeping track of how many times I say incentive? There's a lot. Along with that, okay, so the maximum continuous CRP rental rate is still $300 an acre. So right off the bat, there's that room for an additional $60 an acre for the rental rate, comparing general to continuous. The SIP, or the sign-up incentive payment for continuous CRP, that didn't change last year. It's still 32.5% of that first year's rental rate. And then let's see, I'm going to jump down to the very bottom bullet, the PIP, or the practice incentive payment. It jumped from 20% to 50%. So if you're putting in a continuous CRP practice, you get 50% cost share to install it. There's maximums, of course, but then you get an additional 50% of that practice incentive payment. It's broken out a little weird. You get 40% of that when you first install the practice, then you get 10% 5 years later. But big picture, it's basically 100% cost share to get that CRP seeded. SAFE, or the State Acres for Wildlife Enhancement, that moved from the general sign-up to continuous. So that's hopefully increasing the interest in that, building wildlife habitat. And then HELI, or the Highly Erodible Lands Initiative, that's still available in general, but it's also now available in continuous. Again, big picture, higher rental rates and incentives to hopefully increase CRP interest. There are 2 pilot programs that are in CRP, SHIP, or the Soil Health and Income Protection Program. That's been in Iowa for a couple of years now, but just to make sure you guys are aware of what that is, it's a shorter term contract. We're looking at 3 to 5 years. The rental rate is only 50%. The acres that can go into this program are limited to 15%, and it should be the least productive ground that's in that farm. There's no cost share to seed the stuff down, and we're looking at the lowest cost conservation cover. So typically these are going to be cool season introduced grasses, and the second reason behind that is the landowners can come in and hay or graze those acres outside of the primary nesting season. If you are a historically underserved participant, so beginning farmer, limited resource producer, the rental rates increase to 75% of that county average, and then you do get some cost share to get the area seeded. The other one, the one that's new for Iowa this year, is Clear 30. So Clear stands for Clean Lakes, Estuaries, and Rivers. And these are 30-year contracts. So a couple of things on this one. In the past, it was in the Great Lakes and Chesapeake Bay watershed. Now it's available nationwide. The big kicker with this one, it's for re-enrollments only. So it's not going to be anything new going into CRP. It's going to be stuff that's expiring this year that'll get re-enrolled. And the kinds of practices that are going into this one are going to be waterways, buffers, filter strips, and wetlands. Yeah.
I'm just curious, just policy-wise or whatever, you re-enroll something in that clear 30, you would have that same contract for 30 years?
Correct.
Okay.
They have a little bit, there's one of those rental rate incentives since it is a longer term contract. But yeah, it's 30 years.
Is there stats checks on those? Like you're re-enrolling a waterway?
Yes. Yes. So here's something that's a little unique with Clear 30. NRCS, or a TSP, our technical service provider, we are required to go out at least every 3 years and check those CRPs. And what we're checking for is maintenance. So the other part of Clear 30, with the maintenance, the landowners are either going to get 75% cost share to do that maintenance themselves, or FSA is going to hire a contractor to come in and take care of the work for you, 100% cost covered. So it's a little different, little unique. There's not a lot of interest, but we'll see how this goes over the years. I think there's more interest in it than what we anticipated. Good question, Tara.
Is that capped or not? Like Clear 30?
Capped for the rental rate or for acres?
For acres.
I don't believe so. Okay, CRP in Iowa, our current enrollment is 1.7 million acres. We have about 26 million acres of cropland in the state, so we're sitting about 6.5%. We have about 104,000 contracts, so that's really looking at an average of 16.5 acres per contract. Looking at how that breaks down, of the 1.7 million acres, we have about 425,000 in general CRP and 1.27 million acres in continuous. So for 2022, what we're seeing, what we're hearing, we're not seeing a ton of new offers. Commodity prices are high, cash rent is high. That lowers the interest because CRP rental payments, we're typically lagging about a year behind. But those rental rates are reviewed and adjusted every year. We are seeing a steady rate of re-enrollments. For the re-enrollments, we're not sure if they're going to require a new seating or an inner seating. But overall, we expect to maintain what we have. For the most part, we are seeing a lot more interest in continuous CRP than what we are with the general. Better incentives, better rental rates. If that's the way people can go, that's the way they are going. So taking a look of, CRP expirations over the next few years. We dip down a little bit in 2024, but then we start skyrocketing. Just to spit out some numbers, we're going to be sitting right around 115,000 acres for this year and next year. Then we'll dip down to 75,000 acres that will expire in 2024. Then in 2026, we jump up to 275,000 acres and peak in 2027 at 304,000 acres. Then in 2028, we fall off the cliff. We drop down to 34,000 acres. Does anybody remember the CRP sign up of 2019? Let's see, no, 2017.
Yep.
Yeah.
This is why we're here.
Yeah.
Well,
So I better watch out for 2028, right?
does re-enrollment mean that people could re-sign up for the pollinator program, or do we know whether that will still be there?
I anticipate it will still be there, but there are no guarantees.
Sure.
There have been a few times that I anticipated something that I had never seen before and it happened, or I had not predicted something would happen and it did. But I would fully anticipate that it'll still be around. Was there another question or comment? Okay. So that leads me to pollinator enrollment. So switching gears from looking at what's coming up to be expiring to looking back and what went in at what particular point in time. So starting in 2012, we barely had any. There were 8 acres of pollinator that went in, but then we started seeing, it started bumping up a little bit year after year. 2015, we saw a pretty substantial increase, but then 2016 is when it exploded. When I was working in the field, my recollection of pollinator enrollment is this. We don't have any general CRP. We have high CRP rental rates. What is available for me to seed down my farm? And pollinator was the only thing that was available at the time that worked for a lot of people. So 2016, it exploded. 2017, we were still riding the high pretty good. Started dropping off in 2018, and then 2019, absolutely nothing. So just a few notes about this. Pollinator contracts are limited to 10 years. So between 2025 and 2028, we're going to be seeing a lot of pollinator acres expiring. When the contracts expire, the landowners are going to have a few different options. They can bring it back into production, or they could stick it back into CRP or keep it in CRP. For the most part, FSA requires it to stay in the same practice that it went in as. There's going to be a few circumstances when they can switch the type of CRP, but for the most part, if it went in as pollinator, they want it to stay as pollinator. So if the pollinators stay in, I am anticipating, I don't have a crystal ball, but I'm anticipating that there's going to be some interseeding needs for those to stay in. The trends that we see with CRPs that are more dominated, it's like the CP25s, more heavy in the grasses. We're seeing a lot less forb diversity when those come up for re-enrollment. Just a quick look at pollinator contracts. So just doing some quick math. The size range for a pollinator contract just ranges from about 4 acres at the lower end to about 20 to 30 acres per contract during that peak. Okay, so switching gears a little bit and talking about CRP certification. Back in 2020, there was a change, and NRCS was required to start certifying all practices. Before then, we were only required to basically spot check and certify about 10% of the CRPs when they were installed. But again, starting in 2020, everything had to come over to our side for us to review and sign off on. So we need the documentation to show the practices were installed according to our specs. So with that, it's critical for our clients to understand what they need in order for us to certify. So they really need to sign the seeding plan, but the biggest thing that caused some heartburn in 2020 was getting the seed tags. Also some carryover with some heartburn last year. Some offices are requiring a tag for every single seed bag that comes across. Some are requiring 1 per lot. So when you're working with your clients, just make sure that they have the seed tags so then we can come in and make that certification. So when we're looking at the seed mixes, we're looking at the species, we're looking at the PLS, the seeding rate, of course. And then I just want to put a quick plug in about the seeding calculator. If you're using a mixture, which is probably 99.9% of the time, different than what the local office gives you, if you could email the entire seeding calculator to that local office, that saves us a ton of time going through and plugging everything in, especially with the wonderful diverse mixtures that we're getting. CRP questions.
I don't know if I need, yeah.
this might be for really anyone in the room. Has anyone figured out how to convince the farmers to keep their seed tags? Because I'm pretty sure Peyton's full-time job last summer was responding to NRCSs and giving seed tags, which we're okay to do, but I know that's kind of harder. I think you guys want it from the farmer because, and we keep it for the farmer's file, but we because we just could not, no matter how much we emphasized or what we did, we couldn't convince the farmers to hold on to it. And they love the receipts. They love anything that says money on it, but the seed tags, I don't know. It just didn't mean anything to them, and I don't know if anyone figured something out there, but just so, what?
You have to do what Laura does when she sends it to me, and she sends me a whole bunch of seed at one time. She will literally scan all the seed tags on one page. So I have like one giant page of just all the seed tags that I need. And then she sends it to me. And then I can just look in my book and be like, oh yeah, we have this, it's zone whatever and whatever. That might help farmers. They don't like little tags or.
Yeah. That's true. Oh, well, yeah, I don't know if you have
Yeah.
anything you wanted to say about that, where I know it's less desirable, but we end up just emailing what we have on file for what we gave, even though it was maybe 2 months after we planted it or something like that.
I would consider that good. To me, 2020 was a perfect storm of events. COVID hit. We had a huge CRP re-enrollment. We had some CRP changes. There was just a lot going on and a lot for everybody to remember. Trying to work with our clients either outside of the office or in the field and trying to for them to remember everything they needed to do. I think it led to a series of unfortunate events. Getting the seed tags is one of them. So we've been pushing and promoting that from the state office level. Make sure that you're working with your clients. Make sure that they understand that when they're signing up for CRP and not when they're coming in and signing off and turning in their bills. Make sure that they remember that up front. Some of my former clients I was talking to, and they got burned by that, and I guarantee they're never going to let that leave their memory bank. So I'm hoping that at least through some farmer-to-farmer communication, that word is getting spread as well. But yeah, that's a very good point.
So, I know you're talking a lot about Iowa. I don't know if, and a little bit about the general CRP. I'm from Minnesota, and one thing that always has been kind of an issue was that the administering a county office would, obviously most farmers don't know anything about any of these species, and so they'll put together a lot of times they'll have this, they got their form sheet with a group of species based on what's commonly available, but there's plenty of other stuff available, obviously, though. Mm-hmm. And they'll pick a bunch of things and make a mix, sort of. And then, so you'll get this customer come, they'll say, hey, I need a mix, and here's my seeding plan, and, there's plenty of alternatives. Yes. I mean, that actually, by doing that a lot of times, it really minimizes diversity. But a lot of times there's just this wall where, you could tell is it trying to get, say, the customer or to a substitute other species that would be totally, applicable and actually very nice to have in sometimes a lot of the cases for the area, the species that are even selected don't even exist there naturally. And so you could even do a more appropriate planting. But just getting the customer, that all to happen, and I don't know if it almost seems like maybe, some in the past, sometimes the offices are like, well, not so responsive to that, but it may be getting better, but,
Okay.
It just, maybe when they, send customers off that you can substitute things, so whoever you get, look to for seed quotes and all that, if it meets our criteria, there can be other species in there. It just, seems cumbersome a lot of times.
Yes.
And the client that is got the planting is worried about following rules and all that, and they're like, I don't want to go outside of that. So you can't,
So that's up in Minnesota, right?
Yeah. It varies county to county too. It's kind of
Okay.
crazy. It's like, one county they're like really progressive on like ecology, and the next one is like
Standard,
the
here's
dark
your
ages.
set mix, go and be happy.
Yeah.
Yep. So one thing that we've done here, and that's part of the presentation, is that seeding plan supplement. Have you seen that, what we do here in Iowa?
I may have, don't know. But
Okay, so it sets that seeding plan supplement, we'll go through it, but it has, I have a CP2, what are the minimum seeding requirements? Well, we need 3 or 4 native grasses, 1 or 2 flowers or forbs. And you can do something different than what we send you, but we just need to make sure that it'll meet our standards and specs.
Okay, I know what you mean. That I didn't.
Yeah.
I'm not on that side of it anymore. I'm a
Okay.
different part, but that is something that I just recently. Every so often, I'll get customers come in because I'm managing a certain production site, but they'll, and so I still get some interface with that, and I see that still happening, where that disconnect sort of.
Yep.
But there's, you got to meet all those criteria, and if that's
Yep.
what we're talking about, yeah.
Yeah, so one of my most recent experiences, my husband has some ground that's going into CRP, and I made a very simple seeding mixture because I knew whatever I was going to put into it, it was going to be different based on some preset mixtures that some of the seeding companies have. So I sent him a basic mixture, and I said, I'm sure there's other mixtures out there that are going to be better than this, and if you want to do something that's better and probably cheaper, that's great. Just make sure that we review it before anybody purchases anything, so then we don't have to make any changes and that we know it'll meet our specs. So absolutely. I much prefer a more diverse mixture. So, yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so generally speaking, at the higher level, CRP is promoting diversity as much as possible, and it's just some counties are kind of like lagging behind, and
It could be
some
the
administrators.
Yeah, it could be the experience in the field
Right.
office, the knowledge base, how busy they are, how high their workload is. But yeah, having that back and forth is I think, wonderful.
All right, thanks.
Any other CRP questions? Yeah.
It was kind of random where I heard it from, but I was talking to someone in the state office in Missouri, and they said that they had heard some rumors about Iowa switching to Ecotype or maybe even yellow tag requirement. Is that going around at all? Okay, I was just curious.
If I have not heard it, and I work in the state office. There are a couple situations where we do require the local ecotype, but those are few and far between. For the most part, no.
Cool, thanks.
Okay, so I'll switch gears here a little bit. We'll go into the conservation cover standard. So this is more of an awareness for everybody. Right now, the conservation cover practice standard is going through a review process at the national level. It's gone, I don't know if it's gone through the public review comment or not, but it's getting reviewed right now. Once the national standard is updated, they kick it to the states, and we have 1 to 2 years to review it and adopt the new standard. For the most part, we're going to be, we'll review the national standard and see if there's going to be any changes that make sense for our state. But for the most part, national doesn't want us to make any major changes to the practice standard. So again, if there are any changes, they're typically minor. Spring of 2023 is probably the absolute earliest that our standard will get updated within the state. So since there's probably going to be some minor changes from the national standard to the state standard, what we're going to be looking really hard at is all of our support documents that go along with our practice standard. So looking at what we call guidance documents and implementation requirements. So really those are our old job sheets where you had a few pages of information about the standard, how to apply it, what the different options were, and then the last couple of pages might have been the seating plan. So we split those two documents apart, called them guidance documents and implementation requirements. So putting in there all of the information options that people need to be considering when they're installing that standard. Then we've got our statement of work and then other documents as needed. Okay, how are we doing on time? Okay, all right, good. The seating plan supplement is almost everybody familiar with this? Okay, I'm going to ask a question. Do you want to go through this section by section, or can I gloss over all of those slides and go to the end where we say, what do you guys like, what do you don't like about it? Okay. So I will go through these slides relatively quickly. Basically, the bottom line is if something's different than what is given to our client, we just need to make sure that it meets our standards and specs, and we need to make sure that it's run through the native seating calculator. So we've got the program, whether that's CRP, EQIP, CSP, EQIP CIC, RCPP, or REAP, or God forbid, just somebody doing it on their own. And then the CRP practice, so the 2s, the 1s, the 25s, the 40s, the 42s, the 43s, as well as the seating purpose. So to me, this is the meat of the document, what the moisture regime is, if that local ecotype is required. So here in Iowa, that's going to be if the seating is for long-term reconstruction, so greater than 15 years. So this won't be applicable to CRP. They're capped out at 15 years. Those clear 30s are for re-enrollments only. And we won't know that when they start a new CRP contract, if they will be going into clear 30 or not. So then the other time, native seating should be limited to local ecotypes or source identified when it's within 1 mile of an existing prairie remnant. So the nurse crop, if it's a full seating or interseeding, the seating rate, if it's 20-20, 30-10, 10-30, minimum number of forbs, minimum number of grass. So then the basic requirements for all of the seatings, minimum requirement 40 seats per square foot, blah, blah, blah. And if there's any additional requirements, so if that's a diverse prairie restoration, a pollinator seeding, prairie strips, or monarch habitat. So questions. Overall, I've got a few questions. Overall opinion of the seating plan supplement, if it's working, if you like it, if you don't like it, if there are some adjustments that we can make to it to make it better for both the client and the native seed industry. Overall opinions, suggestions, comments, input. It's all hunky-dory.
I use it daily, and I've used probably 3 or 4 other states around us. Your guys' seating calculator is by far and away just way better than any other state. It's incredible how little swearing I do at this one compared to everything else. It's just so complimentary of it. Awesome calculator.
Good. And I suppose another question I can ask, are you guys seeing common issues or errors from the field office that we need to be providing a little bit better training to our staff, so then you're getting the information that you need? I'll take that as a
Oh
yes.
man, can we please update that list? Like I get that list and like there was one, I don't even remember what it was, but it was for a wetland and it had like Dahlia purpurea in it. I'm like, this is not a wetland species.
Okay.
And then there's like stuff that's not native to central Iowa, but yet that was the list I was given. So our office coordinator's always been super cool with just like, you know, okaying things, because I'll go through the list and be like, this is not appropriate for the site, this isn't appropriate for the site, this isn't appropriate for most of the state. But yeah, if we could work to update that list, I think would be super helpful. Or the lists, I understand there's not just one. I don't personally work with these lists often.
Okay.
I was recently given one and was rather appalled
Okay.
at how not appropriate it was for the site.
So was that an actual seating plan, or are you talking about within the seating calculator, things are wrong?
Yeah, it was the plan. I don't think
Okay.
it was the seating calculator.
Okay. So what we have standard seating plans. We've got dry mixtures, wet mixtures, mesic mixtures for the different CRP practices. So it sounds like we need to go through and review those and make sure that they are appropriate.
Yeah, it just seemed like too broad of a brush.
Okay. Okay.
I think the supplement sheets are working really well. The one comment that I've seen, or one problem I've seen a few times, is the office might put that it's a 2020, and then the seating plan is actually a 3010, or so like they're not matching. But
Okay.
you just have to call and check. But I would say on the wetland, if you do like an update on the calculator, it would be really nice to be able to see on the calculator. You can see if it's a spring, summer, or fall, but you can't see if it's a wet or dry. And so I think a lot of offices don't know, and so then they're just picking some common species.
Okay.
But I think that would be helpful on some of the projects.
Okay.
So.
Oh, you guys are easy on me. Okay. If you guys see anything else, have any other ideas, suggestions, comments, please email me. I don't know if it's in my next few slides. I'll be going over the actual seating calculator itself. So I think I'll stop there. Just real quick, it seems like sometimes we can have a lot of different criteria for different seed mixtures. So I just wanted to point out that in the actual calculator itself, we do have this conservation cover check sheet. So if something is meeting criteria, it's green. If it doesn't, it's red. But here's where it also talks about the local Ecotype seed. Okay. So the native seeding calculator itself is getting reviewed. I talked to my boss earlier this week, and he really wants that reviewed this year and updated. Some things that we're going to be taking a look at are the moisture regime, habitat type, region, possibly adding new species, and then also reviewing the seeds per pound. But we've received a lot of input on some suggested changes, and probably the biggest one is Virginia wild rye. Right now in our seeding calculator, it's stuck with savanna habitat in the medium moisture regime, and we're looking at adding in the prairie habitat and the wet moisture regime. As far as the region, I know that some counties are missing a few species, whether that was on purpose or not, I don't know. But just reviewing the region for all of the different species to make sure that's correct. And that's pretty much it. So if there's a species that you've worked with that you think is missing some information, let us know. But again, we are taking a look at updating this, and hopefully sooner rather than later to get some of those changes made. So I got a question for the group. I was looking through some information a couple of nights ago. And one of the questions was, when is the best time to update the native seeding calculator? And it looked like summertime, June, July, would have the least impact to the native seeding industry. Is that, okay. So anybody that has sent in comments so far about this information and recommended updates to the seeding calculator, thank you. If you have other comments, again, please email me and let me know. Did you get it? Okay. Okay, I've got a little bit of bonus material if there's time. I have 1 minute. A very quick heads up, last December we had a new tech note that was released on prairie strips. It is in our field office tech guide, section 1, tech notes, agronomy, and it is tech note 41. This was one thing that Al Lane got put together before he jumped ship. But it just goes in and talks about the actual practice itself, making sure that you're reviewing landowner objectives, taking a good inventory, looking at the location of the strips within the field, good overall planning with the client, the size, the seeding establishment, and maintenance. The general CRP offer deadline is today. And then just a couple of quick comments. We've heard a lot of concern about the herbicide shortage on getting a good kill for transitioning cover type. So primarily switching from a cool season grass to the native grasses. And we've also heard a lot about the introduced seed shortage. So primarily brome. And along with that, what you can get a hold of is really expensive. And that's all I have. Any other questions?
One more quick question, and it's more probably just up for discussion or maybe just food for thought for later, but on the seed calculator, is there any thought in putting down the coefficient of conservatism?
We have that.
Is it, oh, it's on there?
It's in there.
Oh, cool.
I don't remember if I read something about it, but I don't know if the comment was reviewing the actual numbers that were tagged with the species, or if it was for a certain standard, some of those additional requirements, making sure that we are meeting that coefficient of conservatism.
Yeah, and I know that that's like, a lot of those are under review at the moment. I know like Tom Rosberg and Deb Lewis, that whole crew is all working on updating a lot of those values. I'm not sure when their projected date of completion is, I think they're getting close.
Okay.
I wonder about putting in relative establishment rates, because we know there's some species that establish really well, and there's some species that establish at a much lower rate, typically. I'm not sure what that would do, but there might be some that are being, could be, you could reduce seeding rates on because they're very reliable establishers, and others that, if you really want them in there, maybe you should bump them up.
Okay.
Especially like spring seeded species, our students did a survey of CP42 fields in their third year of establishment, and we also had the seed mixes for them, so we could calculate establishment rates. And a lot of those missing early spring species were, they only started with 3 species to begin with, and then those were planted at such a low rate that, a lot of times they don't show up at all. So especially where you're looking for a particular component in the eventual planting, having that typical establishment rate would give you more guidance on the how many seeds per square foot you need to put out there to actually see it, as opposed to just planting it, right? Yeah. I don't know, Justin, if you think that's a good idea or not.
I think, yeah, I mean, it would need, it could be helpful if in very general terms. I think one of the nice things about the calculator is it's not too prescriptive. I don't think it allows people to do what they want to do, which is a nice thing. You know, with the way that seed mixes are designed, you know, it seems like those kinds of things are not always the key piece of information that's used to make those decisions. It seems like it's often more to get at the price point that a farmer's going to buy. So I don't know. I don't know if it would be used, if it's, I don't know. It seems hard to kind of anticipate whether it would be useful or not, I suppose. So,
Just so I can recap, you were saying species that have a lower rate of successful germination, upping those and actually that's a really good idea in terms of conservation. The other side of it would just, would be cost. Yeah, because I think for our strategy is we use switchgrass, western yarrow, common evening primrose to keep price down. Otherwise, we'd put basically none of those, wouldn't really put much of any of that in there. And then we can add a little bit of rough blazing star. We can add some butterfly milkweed, and it's not a ton, but we can put some in there and still keep it at $130 per acre. Whereas if you all of a sudden start doubling your rough blazing star, well, it'd be really tough to keep that, in a price range with where the farmer, and we don't mind. I mean, I think we're all happy to raise prices, but where the farmer would find a suitable price point to even want to go into CRP.
But then at least it's not, if you know that if you're just putting a little bit in and it also has a low typical rate of establishment, at least you know that, right? It's, this is kind of a token, right?
Okay.
It's in here, that box has been checked. Biologically, ecologically, is it really there?
Yeah.
And so, coming back in and going out and surveying the vegetation and looking at the mix, you say, all right, the mix looks good if you're just looking at species in the mix, great mix. Yeah. But then when you look at the vegetation, so just beginning to bridge that gap, because I know you can't sell what people won't buy.
Yeah, and even I think to that point is we, and I know this kind of stinks, but we try not to look at it per farmer's 12-acre plot. We're thinking Iowa. So we're thinking per 1,000 acres in our area, how much rough blazing star is there? So, and that kind of helps because I've been to some fields where you get real bogged down because you look and you're like, well, it's all wild bergamot and black-eyed Susan, so that's kind of a bummer. But then as you start spreading out, if you put a little bit, you can add, percentage-wise, it just adds overall. So
That might be good information to include in like our guidance document, some things to take into consideration.
26 sites.
Okay.
And, we can tell you how much is established per.
I was gonna just say, in general, like if you add in, like 0.1 seeds per square foot of milkweed, you're gonna probably get pretty decent stand of milkweed. Whereas if you do that for like Culver's root, that's a laughable amount to expect something to come up. So, based on seed size and stuff like that. It's just kind of the challenge would be how do you come up with those values and how do you defend them? So, because you guys would be getting those questions. So.
Okay, I know you guys might not have heard of this person, and if I don't say his name, Grant Thompson, and this is talking about trees. But thinking in the whole world, big statewide thing. And the issue I'm tackling right now with the stupid ash trees, and I did not say the bad word, I said ash. Maybe the percentage of species, that is part of the calculator though, isn't it? The percentage? If I'm remembering correct, yeah. So if there's like recommended percentages and then taking it into account, you know, establishment, you know, that gives better educated decisions and stuff. And I know we're gonna start applying it to our tree plantings because I don't want this kind of job security until I retire. I want these ash trees gone in the next 5 years, and it's a mess, but I would hate to see something like that happen with our natives. But I just don't think it's as highly likely, but you know, when we get dirty seed or something like that, I know we get problems, and that's probably more of our danger. But anyway, I do like the idea that you guys are talking about this because I think it's really important. So, not a question, but thoughts.
I just had a comment on something else to maybe look for on the calculator, and that would be for the mixes that need the spring, summer, and fall, but you have to have like 3 species of each of the pollinators. There's no requirement of, you can just put like half a seed each of the spring, right? Because those are the more expensive, and then make it all summer or fall. And so it might be good to have a minimum requirement of spring. And then something else that Alan had talked about was, so right now the calculator says that you can use like red clover and things like that for spring, so that's what can make your mix really cheap. And he had said that he talked to the local offices and told them not to accept that, but I do still see mixes coming with those in it to make the mixes cheaper, and then I think like it's not gonna be successful. And so if there's any way that we could just say like you can't use those, I think that would be a good thing.
Okay.
This is kind of on the same lines, but you know, I know there's, I guess, one goal is to have, you know, pollinator plants, and clovers do, like you said, you know, maybe that's one of the reasons they're throwing them in there, but, you know, the whole issue of, so a few years back, it seemed that all of a sudden they redid all the all these the calculators or whatever to have a lot more small seed species put it, you know, in. It was more by seed size and all that. And then all of a sudden it was like 2 or 3 real common, like the primrose and the yarrow, all of a sudden become fillers. And, areas where there's everything's wiped out, there isn't even common stuff like black-eyed Susan. I mean, in my area, you can't find like remnants with, it's gone, and that's considered early successional. But there's yarrow in all the road ditches, and there's primrose, weeds in our fields, growing natives, in our native fields. And we didn't even plant them, but they're all over the place. So it's like, well, does it make sense to put something out there that much in the landscape that already is there, as opposed to maybe just putting less on and using that money to just get a few more of those species that need to be put back into the landscape that are, scarce and actually aren't like that impossible to get going. Part of the problem is they're all spring planted, because a lot of those species we're talking, if you put them in the fall, they'll be there. But and this is another issue, is like how, can farmers be convinced to do, it seems like a lot of the programs are set up to emphasize spring planting. And, seems like for even the stuff that comes in the summer, you'll get that anyway. If you do a fall planting, generally speaking, you'll get those legumes still, and there's hard seed. And so, anyway, yeah, like fillers. Why do we have fillers? Why don't we just? So, and if for native growers, we grow not that, but we'd sell. I mean, you probably come out in the wash, and maybe some native growers won't agree with that, but you're not making a lot of money necessarily on the cheap ones, but they're easy to grow. But you could sell more of the others. I don't know. better ecological in Mayville.
Yeah. So I think one comment that I'll make, in the past, well, general CRP, we're still sitting at 50% cost share. And in the past continuous, we were pretty low. But with our new incentives, hopefully that'll make things a lot easier to choose those more diverse mixtures that might cost a little bit more. But now we've got the cost share to help out with that cost.
100% cost share. Yeah, so.
Yeah.
Is there a cap?
Now don't go running around saying it's 100% cost share. Because there's some of those little details that trip people up. But yes.
Eventually, you
Yeah.
get your money back.
90, we'll just say 90% cost share. Call that good. So it's funny. I don't know if they figured out if land changes hands between the person who installed the CRP versus who owns it in year 5, who's getting that additional 10% payment. So we'll see. Yeah.
One more seed mix calculator comment. So the way it's set up now, and this, the way that most other states do it too, is that each species basically is able to fill multiple bloom categories. So like, for example, Dahlia purpurea, I believe, is set as a fall and a summer species, which you could argue about that. But what that does is it also means that you can create a mix with a very minimal amount of spring species, fall species by double dipping. And so if you were to sort of just force people to pick one, then that might increase the amount of fall and spring ones that you find planted. That would be a potentially easy way to fix it. Because there's a lot of species in fall, certainly, that could be used. But when we did our analysis on seed mixes, and was that basically people were just choosing Dahlia and Heliopsis and stuff like that that filled those, they filled the summer and fall, so that's all they planted. When they could have chosen like a smooth blue aster that establishes really well and provides true fall bloom. So I don't know, that would be a potential place to look into.
I think at this point, maybe it's time for me to stand up.